Welcome to the Mystical Unknown. I'm your host, Angela Edwina, and for this episode, we're going to talk about the Hat Man. For those of you that don't know, the Hat Man is a worldwide phenomenon where people see a shadow figure. Normally, it looks like a man, and he has a hat on. Now, this figure can have white eyes, red eyes, no eyes. It depends on who he's coming to. And for this episode, I would like to tell you my experiences because I have quite a few experiences with the Hat Man. I would also like to read some experiences from people that have posted on Reddit and other online forums. And if you have any experiences and if you would like to tell your story, whether it's about the Hat Man or about any other kind of paranormal entity, you can send me a message by clicking on the description and then click on the link beside share your story. Before I get into my experiences with the Hat Man, I feel like I need to describe the house that I grew up in. So I grew up in rural Alabama. It was very rural. There were no street lights. Everything was extremely dark at night. And the house that I grew up in was built in the early 1900s. We moved into that house when I was around 3, so around 1982. And I had experiences the entire time that I lived there. And it wasn't just the Hat Man, it was other types of spirits and entities and other things that were going on. But the Hat Man was one that really stood out and is a very prominent memory for me in that house. So the house had 4 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. 3 of the bedrooms were on the main floor as well as the bathroom. And then part of the attic had been converted into a bedroom. And all of this will be relevant as I'm telling my Hat Man stories because you'll see. When we first moved into the house, my bedroom was right beside my parents' bedroom on the main floor. And I had experiences in that bedroom, but I don't quite remember them because I was young. The way I know about them is my mother would tell me about things that I was saying and she thought I was having nightmares. But I would wake up in the middle of the night scared, calling for my mom and dad and telling them that there was a scary man in my room. And of course, they would never see anyone, never see signs of anyone ever being there. And my mom would say that the man would be by my bed and he had a hat on. And she said that I would give the same description every single time that it happened. So after a while, I think my parents were just tired because I was waking them up quite often talking about a man being in my room. And so they decided to move me from that room to the other bedroom that was on the main floor. It was down the hall and it was right beside the bathroom. So back then, I had to sleep with my door open. I don't know why my parents wouldn't let me shut the door. And with that bedroom being directly by the bathroom, like if anybody went to the bathroom, there would be, I'd see a shadow going by or whatever. So I can remember laying in bed, my bed faced my door, and there was a window above my bed. Like it was a regular size window, but it was high enough up that it was above my bed. Now I was about 6-ish, 7, somewhere in there when I remember this. But I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and it must have been like a full moon or something because there was light coming in from the window, but it was very dark outside because, like I said, I lived in a very rural area. There was no street lights. But I can remember the light coming in, and my door was open, and there was someone standing in my door. And I was looking at him, but I could not move. I could not move. I could not make a sound. It was, I guess, sleep paralysis. So as I'm watching him, he's standing in my doorway, which is close to the bathroom. I'm not sure if it's like my dad or, my mom or something going to the bathroom, and they stopped in the doorway to check on me. So I'm laying there. I can't move. I can't talk. I can't do anything. And I'm just looking at this person, this shadow of a person standing at my door. And then it starts moving closer. And I can remember it moving closer and coming up to the foot of my bed. It didn't come up to the side of my bed. It was at the foot of my bed. And it was then that I could see that even though there was like light, moonlight or something coming in the windows that would have like shine directly at the foot of my bed, the figure was dark. Like you couldn't see any dimension. It was literally like a shadow. And I don't remember ever seeing eyes. I did see the outline of the hat, and it did look like a fedora. But I didn't see any eyes. Like some people will say they see eyes. I don't remember ever seeing eyes. But this figure just stood there as if it was just watching me. It never said anything. It never did anything. It just stood there. And then I don't know if I fell back asleep or what. I think I fell back asleep because I don't remember when I was able to like move or talk, but I remember waking up in the morning. And I told my mom about it, and of course she was like, "Oh, you had a nightmare. That's like almost like the same nightmares you used to have when you were younger." And I don't know if it like crossed her mind, like, why am I having the same nightmare over and over again? But she said it sounded just like what I would tell her when I was little. So that's the first time that I remember experiencing the Hat Man. Now, while I was in that bedroom, I do remember him coming back a few times, quite a few times. And every single time, he would always come to the foot of my bed. It would be almost the exact same experience. I couldn't really move. I couldn't really call for my parents or anything like that. And he would come in and he would stand at the foot of my bed. And it was like he was just watching me, just looking at me. There was a couple of times where I do remember, like after a few minutes, I was able to call for my parents. And I did, of course, scared. And they thought I was having nightmares again. And the way that they went about things back then, like it was so different from now. So they thought I was having nightmares. So again, the way that they thought they would fix it is to move me into the attic bedroom. And boy, that was not the way to fix it. So when I was 10, I moved into the attic bedroom. And this bedroom was one of those where they just took, they put up a wall and put up some paneling, some of the old, like, the really old brown paneling. And that's what my room was. It was this very dark room. And just so y'all know that I was experiencing a lot more than the Hat Man. And that was the reason they decided to move me into another room. And in reality, my mediumship abilities were really coming out, and I was not able to control them, and they didn't understand them. They were very Southern Baptist. So, that wasn't something that we talked about. And so they thought that all the things I was experiencing was because I was in that one room. So they moved me to the attic. And that room, I don't know what it was about that room, but everything, including like all of the paranormal things that I had going on, like got 10 times worse as soon as I moved into the attic room. So the attic room did not have a door. There was a staircase going up, and as soon as you got to the top of the staircase, there was a small little landing, and then it turned directly into my room. And it was a very big room. I was actually kind of excited because the room was really big, and I was 10. I was at that preteen age, and I was excited to get a really big bedroom. So I remember the first night I slept in that bedroom. I feel like I will never forget that night. I was having a problem falling asleep. I just had this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. It was one of those feelings that just creeps you the hell out and you don't know why. So I'm laying there and I'm 10, so I'm young, but I'm not as young. And I've been experiencing things for a very long time. So there are a lot of things that didn't scare me. There were a lot of things that I thought were my normal, so they didn't scare me anymore. But there was something in that room that did not feel good. There was something in that room that was watching me. So I finally dozed off. I remember I couldn't sleep, and I finally dozed off. And I don't know how long I had been asleep, but I woke up, and instead of seeing the Hat Man walk in, he was already there. I woke up and I was laying on my side, and I could see him, and I could move my head. Normally I couldn't move, but I could actually move. And I saw him, and I remember taking the covers and putting it over my head. And I remember that was the first time that I saw the Hat Man, that I was not in sleep paralysis. Like, I was awake. A lot of people will say sleep paralysis, you're still asleep, you're dreaming, your brain is doing all this, whatever. I was awake. I was able to get the covers over my head. And I remember I sat there and I was trying to just, take deep breaths because I was trying not to panic. I didn't know if I should yell for my parents, but I really didn't want to because I feel like they were already thinking I was crazy or something was wrong with me. So I just laid there with the covers over my head. And then finally, I have no idea how long I laid there like that. I was sweating to death. It was hot. So I took the covers off and he wasn't there. But that was the first time that I was able to actually be awake and know that I'm awake. Like, there was no doubt in my mind that I was awake when I saw him. So after that first night, I actually didn't see him for a while. But I would hear footsteps at night coming up the stairs. And I don't know if that was the Hat Man. I don't know if it was some other entity. I honestly don't know what it was. But that was one of the things that started happening after that first night. Another thing that started happening after that first night in the new room is I started sleepwalking. And that was completely new. I had never done it before. I would literally walk downstairs. I would do things. My mom would get up and wake me up. And she was even concerned because all of a sudden I had started sleepwalking and I was literally doing things. And all of this happened after that first night, after that first experience with the Hat Man when I was wide awake. After that first night of seeing him, I would see him maybe once or twice a month. It really wasn't as often as it used to be, but every time that I did see him, I was awake and I was able to move and I was able to control myself. I was able to speak. So there was a time, I was a teenager at this point. I think I was in high school. I was probably 15, 16 maybe. I woke up one night and he was at the foot of my bed. He looks the same every single time. That's something that I need to also get in there. He looks exactly the same every single time. It's just this dark shadow of a man with a hat on. No eyes, no face. Like, I don't ever remember even seeing a mouth or anything. And he's always at the foot of my bed. So I remember waking up and he's there. And, you know, I'm at that teenage age where I'm just like pissed at the world and I'm so tired of this shit. And I remember looking at him and I said, "What do you want?" And I heard this noise. It was like it wasn't like a growl. It wasn't like anything like scary. It was more like a sigh, maybe? Like a sigh? Like a loud sigh. There was no like words with it or nothing. It was like a sigh. And then he was gone. Like literally, he literally disappeared while I was staring at him after I asked him the question. And I never really got an answer to that question. After I did ask him why he was there, what he wanted, whatever, and he didn't come back for a while. Like, I remember there was a few months when I didn't see him after that. And maybe I slept through it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he was there and I slept through it, but I did not wake up and see him after I asked him what he wanted. So I had a few more experiences seeing him while I was still living in that house. But after I moved away to college and got out of that house, I didn't see him anymore. Like, I've literally never seen him ever again since I left my childhood home in Alabama. So that's my experiences with the Hat Man. And now I would like to read some experiences from other people that I have found on forums like Reddit and other online forums. So this first story that I'm going to read comes from Reddit. And it's from XLAESOPX. It was written about 2 months ago. So they write, "When I was about 14, I lived in a house with my mom and abusive stepdad. Most of our fights occurred outside of my room at the end and dark area of the hallway. One night, I awoke to what I thought was my mom messing with me, standing in my doorway to scare me. I kept yelling at her to stop until I woke up some more and noticed that it was actually a very tall, dark shadow wearing a wide brim hat and a long trench coat. I've literally never experienced fear like this in my entire life since and felt sick and as if I couldn't breathe. I told her about it the next day. I accidentally overheard her on the phone with her friend later that day and my mom telling the friend Lucy saw it too. I ended up asking her about it, and she told me that she had seen the Hat Man at the same spot, the dark part of the hallway by my door, 2 times while walking by vacuuming in the living room. She tried to make me feel better by telling me it was someone watching over me. A few years later, my boyfriend's son asked him, 'Do you ever feel like someone is watching us?' and proceeded to give him the exact description of the Hat Man outside of his bedroom in the hallway where a lot of our arguments and turmoil tend to occur. I truly believe that it's a demon that follows you to places of turmoil and anything negative." So this is a very interesting story because of the negative emotions that were experienced during the time of the sightings. For me, I did not experience that. I don't remember arguments and things like that. Now, my childhood was not perfect by any means, but my parents didn't argue a lot. Especially when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of negative emotions. So I don't know that the Hat Man would be some kind of demon or negative entity that appears when there's a lot of negative energy. I don't think that's what he is. And once I'm done reading all of the stories, I will tell you my theory as to what I think the Hat Man is. So this next story comes from the Hat Man Project. So if you're interested in learning more about the Hat Man, the hatmanproject.com is a good resource. The person is in the process of writing a book and has a lot of experiences from people on their website. So this experience was written in November of 2023. And it says, I recently discovered that others have also seen the Hat Man. And I feel great sense of relief knowing that my experiences as a child with this entity were not just singular and perhaps a figment of my imagination. Back in the early 1990s, when I was between the ages of 10 and 12, I was asleep on my side with my back to the side of the bed when I felt someone tap my shoulder, causing me to wake up. As I turned to look, I saw a shadowy figure with a top hat standing over my bed. Alarmed and filled with fear, I started screaming at the top of my lungs. I continued to scream while the Hat Man started smiling and laughing at me with a wide grin, resembling the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. Eventually, my mom came into my room and turned on the lights, causing the Hat Man to disappear. My sister, who was sleeping in the room next to mine, said that my screams were like nothing she had ever heard from me before and thought that I was being murdered. The experience was incredibly intense. Since that night, I've had other strange occurrences, but the Hat Man has not reappeared, thankfully. At the time, I was unsure what to make of the experience, as the grin seemed cartoonish, and I could not understand why the entity was wearing a top hat. It made me question whether I had really seen it. However, I know that I was fully awake and terrified, and not in any kind of sleep state. I'm grateful to know now that others have also seen similar things, including the crazy grin. This last story also comes from the Hat Man Project. This incident occurred in December of 2017 when I was 13 years old. My friends and I had planned a sleepover to celebrate our friend E's birthday at her house. During the sleepover, I shared a bed with friend A, while E shared a bed with another girl named S. As we were winding down in the dark room, with the door slightly cracked, letting in some light, we positioned our beds facing the door. This allowed the light from the cracked door to serve as a makeshift nightlight for us, as we were not accustomed to complete darkness. We giggled and chatted, caught up in the typical drama of 7th grade, before settling in for sleep. We were under the covers with our heads sticking out, engaging in the pre-sleep conversation that often happens during sleepovers. I can't recall what I was doing at the moment when I suddenly saw a flash. It was similar to the effect of someone taking a flash photograph in the dark, momentarily blinding me. In that flash, I perceived a figure bent over our bed. This figure was approximately 7 feet tall and wearing a hat. While most people described the figure wearing a different hat, to me, it appeared to be a bowler hat. The horror I felt was indescribable. I wasn't able to physically move or scream to wake anyone up. I tried to remain calm, but I couldn't understand who this was and how they got into the house where we were sleeping. The sighting happened so quickly that it was difficult to discern the exact details of the figure other than the fact that it was a large black mass wearing some form of a hat. Despite witnessing this, I chose not to mention what I had seen, as I didn't want to frighten my friends or give the impression that I was playing a prank on them. The atmosphere gradually calmed down, and we eventually went to sleep. It was a few months later, while sitting together at the lunch table, that I decided to bring up my experience of seeing a ghost at E's sleepover. However, before I could elaborate, my friend A interrupted me and confessed that she had also seen a ghost during that night. Intrigued, I quickly sketched out the figure and asked her to describe what she had witnessed. Much to my surprise, her description matched mine. She had seen the tall man wearing a hat. While I couldn't explain how both of us had seen the same thing, I had no reason to doubt A's sincerity. It's possible that she was playing a joke on me, but I firmly believe that I genuinely witnessed this figure on 3 separate occasions. Out of those occasions, the one during E's sleepover remains the most vivid in my memory. Now that you've heard about my experiences with the Hat Man and the stories that I have found online, which if you would like to do your own research, there are so many stories online. Just Google it. I would like to give you my theory as to what the Hat Man is. So in that one story, the person said that they saw the Hat Man during times of turmoil. Now that is not my experience with the Hat Man. I think that the Hat Man is kind of like a watcher. I don't think that the Hat Man was ever a human, as in I don't think the Hat Man is a spirit. I feel like it's some other entity, maybe some entity from another dimension that is just observing. Because when you look online and you read stories, the Hat Man doesn't harm anyone. The Hat Man scares the hell out of people, but he doesn't do anything but watch you. Regardless of what kind of hat he's wearing, regardless of if he has eyes or if he smiles, the only thing he does is watch. He doesn't do anything else. He observes. So I feel like it is some kind of entity from another dimension, because there's multiple dimensions, and that could be a whole nother podcast right there. And it's just observing. Maybe observing human behavior and showing up in times of turmoil for some people, and showing up, like for me, I feel like he was showing up because I do have mediumship abilities. I have these abilities that I have tapped into since I can remember. And so maybe he was observing that about me. But he only seems to observe children. Like, there are a few adult stories out there, but not that many. And that could be for many reasons. It could be because children are more open to seeing things. Or it could be that they're observing human development. How are we developing? How are our minds developing? How are people different? I just feel like the Hat Man is some type of watcher. So that's my theory as to what the Hat Man is. If you have a theory, if you're watching this on YouTube, leave it in the comments, because I would absolutely love to hear your theories. If you have a story, you can send it to me. You can leave it in the comments, whatever you want to do. I would love to hear your stories. But yeah, that's my Hat Man experiences in theory. And let me know what y'all think. Thank you for joining me for tonight's episode of The Mystical Unknown.